We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
If you're like me, it's lunchtime, and I want to thank our sponsors of the Faith on the Frontline radio broadcast in the form of Uncle Daryl's Cajun Cuisine at 2560 Lincoln Boulevard, Marina Del Rey. And also Doolin's on Crenshaw, that soul food restaurant owned by Greg Doolin, my good friend and brother, 4859 Crenshaw Boulevard, right here in Los Angeles, California. We want to thank them for being our special sponsors for Faith on the Front Line. I want to encourage all my Faith on the Front Line listeners, if you're hungry, if you want seafood, Uncle Daryl's Cajun Cuisine is the place to go, right there at 2560 Lincoln Boulevard on the corner of Lincoln and Washington Boulevard. And if you want some soul food and you know you're not on a diet but need to be, but you're willing to skip it just for a quick second, I'd encourage you to go to Doolin's right there on Crenshaw Boulevard, 4859. Greg will take care of you. His wonderful staff will smile at you and they will pile it on. I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. Good food, good cuisine. Thank you for being our sponsors. Faith on the Frontline family, go and support Uncle Daryl's and Doolin's. Thank you so much. Faith on the Frontline listeners, this is Dr. Lewis Logan, your executive producer, giving thanks and props to one of our sponsors, United We Ship, 877-229-0577. That's 877-229-0577. Any shipping logistical needs you may have, whether it's a small letter or larger parcel or whatever it is you need, Michelle Israel and the professional staff of United We Ship will take care of all of your shipping needs. They're going toe-to-toe with the big boys, UPS and FedEx, and they're going to make it happen nationwide through their network of shipping logistics capacity. They are sponsors of Faith on the Front Line, and I highly recommend that you call Michelle Israel at 877-229-0577 for any of your shipping needs. They are special sponsors of Faith on the Front Line. He stepped out on faith, and let's step up and support him. Thank you.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history.
And what goes down in history is always a mystery that unfolds as we unwrap the present. Thank you for being with us today on Faith on the Front Line. This is our one of the last of the editions for 2013. We're grateful to be a part of the family here at LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk. We're about the business of making impact and difference in life and in the quality of living itself. I want to thank so much our sponsors, as you've just heard, Doolin's on Crenshaw, Uncle Daryl's in Marina. I want to thank our entrepreneur and frontiersman in residence, Brother Richard Carr, making it happen, and the whole staff and crew here. Been missing my man Van, but I know he's vacationing and doing other things, living life like it's golden. And we're anticipating the presence of my colleague and mentor and brother and pastor, the Reverend William Monroe Campbell. I have to, get it all out. It is just like that. So I'm glad to have you all with us. I hope that you're viewing and that you're willing to call the number that you see right under the title of our broadcast. And I hope that you will call in and just, there's an open forum today. I'm appealing to all of my West Coast sisters and brothers and East Coast sisters and brothers, and wherever you are between the coasts or around the world. This is a global broadcast, and we have a global community. We're part of a global conversation. This is a global forum. Faith has no borders, but it certainly has opportunities
to make an impact, because faith and works live, but faith without works dies, is dead, as James says. So I just want to just give opportunity and forum for whatever it is that you like to express today, whatever questions, or just to call and say hello. Just call and say, hey, Dr. Logan, hey, Lewis, how are you? We'll be glad to just talk with you and chop it up for a minute on whatever subject or topic or question you may have, just something you've been thinking about as you speed into 2014, as 2013 moves into history. And as we continue to deal with and face the various issues that we have on a daily basis, regardless of what it is viable employment, justice under the law, and justice that needs to be effectuated in a way that changes public policy and enhances the life and the quality of existence of all people, that talks and works a new manner in which resources and access is appropriated and made available for everybody. Utopian idea, you might think, but nevertheless, the impetus and impulse within the human spirit for dignity and for life itself, freedom and life. So I want to just open the mic and open this forum, invite you to call in and say hello or anything else that you would like to express. We certainly would love to engage you in that process, because you make it worthwhile. Reverend Campbell and I love to talk to our guests and friends from across the spectrum of life and engagement throughout the community and the world. But you, the listening audience, you who listen and tune in, who may be streaming live on, is it Ustream, is it, Rich? Yeah, so Ustream or whatever other means by which you are accessing this transmission would certainly really would be exciting to just talk with you and hear your viewpoints and get and learn from your perspectives, because I believe that everybody can teach and everybody can learn, and that's why we are more enriched by one another's interactions with each other. Of course, we want to remember and give props and honor to the family and friends of the late, great Marguerite Lamont, whose private funeral services are set for tomorrow. They'll be at St. Bridget Catholic Church in Los Angeles. And, of course, then there's an interment at the Holy Cross Cemetery. And so those of you who really loved and love Marguerite Lamont, as I have and I do, would want to take a moment and pray for her, pray for her family, actually. And, she's, I'm sure, in a place we would like to think, and our faith suggests and says that absent from the body is present with the Lord. And so if there were any overtures or efforts to get her back, I'm sure she'd fight you tooth and nail to stay where she is, even though she exited rather abruptly, and some things you just don't plan, but you never know. That's why you have to live every day to its fullest, and you have to create an environment around yourself and within yourself that anticipates the same, that accepts nothing less than that, that recognizes the principle of the idea that we get out of life what we're willing to put into it, regardless of our station or circumstance. And as a pastor and as a preacher, let me just say to you that where you are does not define and describe who you are. You are who you are, with or without material things or the valued items and trinkets that life may bring to your doorstep or into your sphere of life and experience. You're more than that. You are a creation. You are a child of God. And because of that, your value, your intrinsic value, cannot be measured with respect to those things. Ms. Lamont's value to our community is worth more than any money or any fiscal or financial outlay. But her value over the years, her dedication as an educator, the way that she instilled in the future of our community through her investment in children, her touch, her investment in families and in parents, empowering parents to care for and love their children, is a testimony, a testament to those who poured into her and who she has reciprocated manifold in doing the same for us. So we want to give props and hand clap to and big love to the memory and the legacy of Marguerite Lamont. Can we get the hand clap there, Rich? Thank you so much. And give big props. Thank you so much. And we thank God for what she has meant. And I think that it is for that reason that in her memory that we want to maintain a sense of vigilance as it relates to what actually happens with her vacated seat. Not to be insensitive to her transition, but more or less to be respectful and responsible in light of her transition, that we need to ensure that however that vacated seat is filled, that the leadership is, number one, reflective of the collective genius and expressed sentiments of the affected community, and that furthermore, that the individuals who are a part of that process reflect that same sense of responsible presence as well. We also want to ensure that the process by which her seat is filled is by virtue of some collective genius, the byproduct of a process that we can all own and name and feel responsible for and accountable to. So I'm simply saying, perhaps in a long way, I would prefer that the school board members not necessarily appoint who they feel would be representative in that particular vacated seat, but that the community certainly have a part to play in that vacated capacity. It is our estimation that the more people who are involved in that in a democratic society, in a democratic context, will be more supportive and involved in the survival and viability of just the school system in general, but the way in which the capacity and responsibilities of the school board representative are actually carried out. I am joined by Mr. Clean, Reverend. I don't want to call him Reverend Shine. I don't want to do that. This is Reverend William Monroe. I'm dressed and dapper.
Have mercy.
We got to do it. We got to give it up. Man, the man makes the effort. He comes from Pasadena. He drives here. He's faithful. He has so much on his plate. He's on the board of directors of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Los Angeles. He's a pastor of Mount Gilead Missionary Baptist Church. He's called to many tables of leadership, the Black Brown Clergy Coalition, just to name a few.
Bless you.
And Faith on the Front Line, ever since we've started over the years, and whatever radio station we've been a part of, Reverend William Monroe Campbell has been committed and consistent. And I give it big props and love and appreciate your efforts and your initiative to be here. It's good to see you.
Blessings, greetings, and good morning.
You're headed to?
Back to the office and
Okay.
then
Okay, so you look like you're dressed for a funeral or something. I was like, Lord help. Got to laugh at her. Mama dressed you well today.
all right. Amen.
I'm at to call home and say, thank you, Mother, so much, because you keep the brother looking good. Yes, sir. You heard, and you probably stepped in on my comments in reference to the vacated seat, well, more or less the love and memory of the legacy of Marguerite Lamont.
Yes.
And, of course, the subsequent countervailing issues related to her vacated seat. And we have today an open forum, as you know. So
Yes.
we're opening up the lines for anybody who wants to comment, and I'm certain you probably have something you would love to say.
Yeah. I think it's important for us to be sensitive to the implications of this seat. The first locally elected, as I can remember, locally elected official in Los Angeles was elected to the school board, the Reverend James Jones, who was at the Westminster Presbyterian Church. Shortly after that, Mayor Samyardi appointed Gilbert Lindsay to the city council, and then the first elected city council member from our community, that is, was the Venerable Thomas Bradley. And so it has historical implications for us as a community and in terms of that element of secession, but it also has implications in terms of our sensitivity to what happens with our children. The Los Angeles, as indeed is the case with the East Coast and the Midwest, was a terminal location for African Americans migrating out of the southern states of these United States, and they came this way with a sense of the opportunity that it afforded. If I can do a small segue, the insanity of the gentleman from the Duck Dynasty saying that before the Civil Rights Movement we were happy, and also that we were not singing the blues. I wanted to ask him, where did the blues come from?
Really?
And from whence did they come? In terms of that, the blues followed on the sorrow songs that our forebears in slavery sang, and once they were able to be out of the legal context of slavery, they still found themselves so impacted that they cried out in what became known as the blues. And then you get a wedding between the spirituals and blues that produce gospel music. But that to the side, as we came this way, it was with the opportunity to opening opportunities for our families. Parents came with the idea of getting jobs, but then as they got those jobs, frequently they were as laborers. They also saw opportunity for their children to become educated. And so education became so very important in our community, and even the history of what happened in terms of education, even in terms of teachers coming this way. Teachers who had taught in segregated southern schools would come this way and come as skilled teachers, were not always able to teach because they didn't meet the credentialing requirements. There were a number of pastors in Los Angeles who were able to approach the superintendent and work out arrangements for those teachers to be able to teach with provisional credentials. It was called at the discretion of the superintendent then, while they went to school at night and studied California history and California geography, and so satisfied the requirements for credentialing. And so education has always been an extremely important element. And so the concern becomes, how do we honor the interests of our children? Because again, if you examine what happened in terms of schooling, when the Supreme Court directed that segregation had to be accommodated, and busing was a mechanism, it was at the school board that the fight began to block busing as a remedy to the desegregation, and that's the right word, to the disparity that was coming from de facto segregation. So there's a broad historical perspective, and so at a time when our children are suffering in terms of the education process, is a time for us to re-involve ourselves in terms of raising the question of what is needed in the interest of the children of our community. And so to be sensitive to who makes decisions about who will make decisions regarding the education of our children of our community becomes a matter of critical concern and reflection, and warrants the community indeed becoming actively on board
Yes.
in addressing this issue, because they're talking about more than an office. They were really talking about the future
Yes.
and the potentials for the future for our children.
Sure. As you talk about that, I can't help but think that, not to think that we would necessarily plan for people to sort of transition as we've seen, like what happened with venerated Marguerite Lamont. But it just seems to me that given what has happened, it ought to be just another sign or another signal or another sense. And even with the with the passing of others,
Yes.
from our leaders from our community, you mentioned Tom Bradley, for instance, we need to have a pipeline, as it were, of potentials.
Yes.
That we have to create a consortium, agenda-driven consortium of leaders who have the sense of the historical import of leadership in our communities from the various capacities,
Yes.
and a sense of a vision for where we want our own communities to go. And,
Yes.
and a sense that not just with respect to appointed positions, elected positions, but also as it relates to the development of the assets within our community.
Yes.
And so that we're not always waiting for someone to come up with a project that's got to be approved through City Hall or through the County Board of Supervisors, and then we try to tack on what our own local hire requirements would be, but that we come up with the projects and the ideas and plans and vision, and then begin to effectively enfranchise our community to its betterment.
Yes.
So, I'm just thinking we have to sort of anticipate these things in some way instead of being on the other side. Right now, for instance, there ought to be 2 or 3 folk
Yes.
that have that sense of importance, that agenda, and they're already ready to serve and sit in those places that are being vacated for whatever reasons.
Which becomes a challenge for our community. We have to rethink how we approach the interests of our community. There was a time when that was occurring.
Sure.
And various dynamics. Sometimes things seem
Hold
successful.
it right there. Let's go to the caller,
Right.
and we want to include our caller. Good morning. How are you?
Happy Rising. Bill calling in from Burbank. How you guys
Hey, Bill.
doing
It's
today?
good to have you. How are you today?
Pretty good.
Fantastic.
Pretty good. Just, listening to you guys' conversation, and once again, every Friday I turn on, I just be having to skip by LA Talk Live, and I hear you guys, and
Cool.
you guys are always talking about something interesting. Just had a question.
Yes, sir.
And you was talking about the schooling. You guys are, spending a lot of time talking about the children. I would beg to differ and say that segregation harmed our children more, desegregation
Oh, desegregation harmed the children. Okay.
more than anything that, it harmed not only our children, it harmed our economics. it harmed, everything that we had when we were in the community. And, and I beg to say that when we were trying to segregate, I think we were segregating with the wrong mentality. It had been different if we would have been segregating and there would have been equal economics with that, or been equal, a lot of stuff. But when we segregated, we saw the money, that was in the community, the black community, and it changed hands maybe 6 to 8 times before it left the community. Now we're at 0 because of segregation, because we don't shop or spend with each other, and it just goes on to say that even the education, why are we, it baffles me is like, if somebody oppressed your people and you're sending them to their schools, that doesn't necessarily make sense to me. But we're seeing all around, since we've been in their educational system, that we haven't been thriving. Some of us have, because that's, their nature, their makeup, their DNA. But most of us, I would beg to say, at least in the 80th percentile, probably 90, struggling in education. So my question, And I'm sorry for that long soliloquy.
No, go right here. We're just glad to have you on the line, brother. Go ahead.
I really appreciate you guys because, it's just the epitome of, some real talk. And this gets you, finding a solution. My question is, solution-wise, would possibly one solution be to desegregate? Or to segregate again, and go back and teach our children what we need to teach them. Educate them. Because nobody's teaching them about economics. They learn from it, maybe from a street perspective. Economics. But when it relates to the world, and commerce and stuff like that, we really don't have a firm grasp on it. Wouldn't it be better if we went back to the old ways? At least the thinking, maybe some of the physical proudness, but if we would have at least we went back to some way where when we were segregated, we were all together. And I think that we need to go back. That's just my opinion. Thank you guys for your time, and I really love your show.
And thank you for calling in and giving your input. I'm going to let my mentor kind of get at that a little bit. And I hate that Bill got off the line because I really wanted to ask Bill about what he means by we desegregated with the wrong intent. I have a suspicion what he means, and I have a sense of a similar kind of penchant in my own perspective. But if Bill will call back, maybe we'll clarify that. But Reverend, what you thinking?
I guess I want to raise several questions.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have the statistics immediately available to me.
Not you, Reverend.
But I want to raise some questions about the percentages of achievement at that point in time. The percentages of our children advancing into college, university.
You saw that report
school,
yesterday from the
education, and it's frightening. But going back to the time he's talking about,
Yes.
okay, in terms of that, certainly in the South we had the what we refer to today as the historically black colleges and universities, and as a graduate of Virginia Union University, one of our historically black colleges and universities, I'm appreciative of what that had to offer.
Okay.
And
Maybe that's Bill calling back. Huh?
Is that Bill calling back? Very good. Okay.
Go ahead,
I'm
finish.
appreciative of what that had to offer, but also in terms of percentages is a much smaller percent who have opportunities for additional studies.
Yes.
Most of my professors at Virginia Union had to go to other schools to do their graduate work in order to come back. And so in terms of the percentages, I'm blessed. I have two daughters who are graduates of the University of California system. And so I know the numbers vary, and so we're raising the issue that we need to be able to see the statistics behind, because the anecdotal information may not necessarily correlate with the statistics, although the sensitivity about business ownership has merit, and we want to get Bill back on board, and then we'll talk a little more about even the implication in terms of where the generation is in terms of business ownership.
Absolutely. We have Bill to hold on a second. Does Bill know? Hold on a second, Bill. We'll be right back after this brief break.
Feeling what you say inside. You better tell.
You are now tuned into LA Talk Live. We're more than just talk. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
Journey Sisters is an organization that embodies and captivates women from all walks of life. Our membership includes 44 women who are constantly growing in the areas of personal development and community involvement. Monthly, we offer free leadership classes at McCade's Restaurant. Journey aims to inform women in the areas of heart disease and HIV and AIDS. Experience the journey now by logging into www.journeymosaicinc.com. Toll free 888-906-5519. Journey with no excuses.
Young Connection, your one-stop connection for all your graphic design and commercial printing needs. Young Connection is a full-service printing and media design company dedicated to providing the highest level of customer service and satisfaction. Young Connection provides swift response and rapid turnaround services for banners, brochures, business cards, letterheads, church bulletins, funeral programs, flyers, logo design, posters, and much, much more, all at an affordable price. Young Connection, the official printing company of LA Talk Live. Give them a call at 310-491-3336. That's 310-491-3336, or visit their website at www.youngconnection.com. That's www.youngconnection.com. Young Connection Printing and Media Services, proud sponsors of LA Talk Live, where it's more than just talk.
And we're back. LA Talk Live's Faith on the Front Line. The marriage between being more than just talk, not just talking about it, but being about it. Sounds like we have somebody on the line that has an idea of what that means. And I think Bill called back in to kind of further stir up the conversation. And Reverend Campbell was in the midst of responding, and we had a query for Bill. Bill, are you on the line? Is that you?
Yeah, it's me, buddy. Thank you. Sometimes, I like many people, I just be listening, sometimes afraid to call.
Don't be scared.
Just listening to the conversation. I want to thank you guys for having me back. Now, just to explain, I think what I was speaking on earlier, I went to, HBU. Mm-hmm. And had the best experience of my life.
Sure.
Yeah. But, you have certain people say different things about that, but who cares? But what I'm saying is that it's impossible. If we want to reach these young people, one, we have to relate to them in a today's perspective.
Sure.
Right. And with that, meaning that we can't use old tactics. We have to find new tactics. We can use the old wisdom,
mm-hmm.
right? And we can use the wisdom of part of that. But we're going to need new tactics in dealing with, these children. And when you think about in the 50s, 40s, or just I was talking to you about the Harlem Renaissance.
Sure.
In the 30s and the 20s. Where, you have black stores, like in Harlem and Atlanta, in certain places, you have black communities servicing black people. And whether, that was, whether it was religiously, whether it was economically, whether it was, jobs, all this stuff. And then what ended up happening, ironically, is that because everything is about money and commerce, in this society, is that once they found out, like for instance in Chicago, they stopped going to Woolworth. They stopped,
shopping where they weren't respected,
and shopping at some of these stores.
Sure.
And they're scientists. They study us all the time, whether we think so or not. They study us, or they study our patterns. They study everything that we do. And then they come up with a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we don't have that. We have the mentality, but we don't have, some of the structures in place for us to do some really studying and watching and looking at our patterns.
So, Bill, let me interrupt you right there, if you don't mind, because I want to get to something you said in your earlier comments, and I think it kind of dovetails into what you just expressed. You said something like, we went into the process of desegregation with the wrong plan or the wrong mentality or idea. Unpack that a little bit, and then we want to kind of go where we want to go with this.
Yeah.
Do you remember saying that? Do you remember what you meant by that? Or did
Well, yeah, of
I
course.
could be misquoting you. I thought I heard you say
Yeah.
we
When we look at segregation, we look at what was happening,
mhm.
you know, in the late 40s.
Are you still with us?
I think we lost. It doesn't.
While he's saying that,
yeah.
and as we get him back, again, let me talk from a Los Angeles base.
Okay.
Central Avenue, which was the
Hub,
heartbeat
yeah.
of much
Yeah.
that happened. We did have a series of businesses on Central Avenue, but we also had businesses that we did not own, could not work there. I think it was
Yes.
just in one of our recent broadcasts. I talked about the venerable Colonel Leon Washington was passed. He, along with his wife Ruth, were the founders and owners and publishers of the Los Angeles Sentinel, and he began had his office. The Sentinel was on Central Avenue at that time. We had the Dunbar on Central Avenue. We had H. Claude Hudson had his dental business on Central Avenue, but he was discovering that where you had a number of businesses, thrifties as it was then called, or Woolworths as he mentioned. In fact, a number of others, we could shop there, but we couldn't buy there. He led in a campaign saying, "Don't shop where you can't work."
Yes.
And so the reality is to clarify what we owned and what we controlled, and the desegregation piece was about confronting that, because we really were being violated and exploited in those kinds of situations,
As well as excluded.
Right, until we turned it around, you know, and then it was in the 60s we began to have, the late 60s we began to have people beginning to buy some of those stores.
Sure.
So we need to keep our perspective on the history accurate.
distinctions.
The other piece, and I do want to be able to engage Bill in the conversation. The other piece is, I think he's back online. The other piece is, and I think I shared this one time, I was driving down, by the way, I'm a native of Los Angeles. I was driving down Central Avenue, and I began to wonder what happened
Got
to
two callers.
the
Can both of them come on at the same time?
yeah. What happened to the children of these
Hold on,
business
please.
owners? And I didn't realize, because I was thinking, did we lose sight of it? But I discovered they really went upstairs into the corporate sector.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Hi. Who do we have today?
Hello.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. How are you? This is Rocky. Yes,
Hey, Rocky,
I just
how
called
are
in
you?
there.
Absolutely. You're on Faith on the Front Line at LA Talk Live. How you doing?
Oh, I'm blessed, brother. How about yourself?
We're well, thank you. And I think Bill is on the line as well. You there, Bill?
Yeah, I'm still here. I just really wanted to finish this point.
Please.
because-
Rocky, just hold on a second, and you're part of a conversation, okay?
Okay, I want to. Give me a breath on the conversation. I'd like to know what's going on.
Okay. All right, so Bill is spitting a little knowledge here, and we're kind of chopping it up about black economics and the history of segregation and desegregation and the dynamics of how we have fared or perhaps have been impacted negatively by desegregation. And Bill was finishing his point.
Oh, wow. Go ahead.
Okay, and thank you again.
Absolutely.
I just personally believe, you know, if we look at the psychology, you know, if you tell kids, once again, you can't go here, you can't go do this, you can't do this, most likely kids going to want to do it. You know, it's the psychology of somebody telling you, you know, or you asking someone for freedom, or somebody telling you you can't do X, Y, Z. You know, once you get that, you know, that disturbing psychological paradigm, you know, in your brain, then you're going to think somebody else is complete destiny and your outcome as well. One quick point. You guys know who C.R. Patterson is, right?
The name I think I know, but go ahead.
Let me just give you a little bit. C.R. Patterson.
We need to have him on.
C.R. Patterson was the first black man, right? Now, this is C.R. Patterson in 1910. But he was the first manufacturer.
I think your phone starts messing up, Bill. Are you traveling? You must be traveling or something. I'm sorry, we lost Bill. Do we still have you, Rocky?
Oh, I'm right here.
Oh, cool. In the meantime, while Bill is trying to come back on, talk to us about, thank you for being on the line with us. What's on your mind?
Oh, well, it's blessed to see that another productive show is going on, and informative show that's touching the airwaves and reaching people of all races. And, once you reach people of all races and the masses, then, this is great information to be able to be spread on, and then more people can tune in to your show as well. But, I understood what he was, because I came in basically on the tail end of the conversation, but, it's just, like you did say, it's a psychology behind a lot of this madness that's going on in our society, in our urban areas for the most part, because, of course, the disciplines of life are totally different when you raised up in a black environment or a black family, I should say, opposed to any other race family. And it's a divide. It's still a divide to this day, But when I say we are the people who understand, who get it, we have to do our due diligence and profess it, manifest it to the ones who don't get it, who don't see it. Once we speak it, our job's done, and we hope that they get it, but we have to make sure we tactfully say it to them so they will understand it. Sometimes we might have to, come down to whatever level they're on just to reach them, just as Christ did, and for example,
Yes, sir.
But it's really bigger than us, but the more we reach out, the less the number can get, because you have a lot of more understanding souls on a lot of levels,
Sure. Where are you calling from,
I'm
Rocky?
reading the book. Excuse me?
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Detroit, Michigan right now.
Cool. It's good to have you, brother. Bless you. Thank you for listening. And you were about to say you're reading a book?
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now called Black Boogeyman, and it kind of speaks on the level of we as a race, how we still don't know who we are.
Wow.
And, that's why, as a result, it's still all this black-on-black crime.
Yeah.
And we still blaming, the man when we're
killing ourselves.
I mean, it's proportionate numbers. It's like, what is making us do this? What is it? Is it money? Is it lack of knowledge? Is it lack of love? I mean, what is it? What's making us do this in proportionate numbers across the country? Because Detroit is off the hook here.
Yeah, it is.
It's off the hook in L.A. It's off the hook in every urban area in America.
Yeah, and
let alone the third world countries.
Let me see if I can wedge. Yeah. Okay, so if I can raise something in there, and Bill, we're glad to have you back on board. And one of the things that Bill was talking about was telling our children what they can't do. But the other side of that is telling our children what they can do.
What you can do, exactly.
And encouraging them. Again, I need to go personal. I talked about having two daughters who are graduates of the University of California system, one from UC Berkeley, one from UC San Diego, but then a son who is a business owner and has contracts in terms of where he's getting the money from Health and Human Services, from Wells Fargo, where they're paying him, to provide services, and from the Army and others who are paying him because of the particular kind of business that he has. So we need to tell our children what they can do, and they can move up to the top. They can make things work for them. Right now, creating a contract with Pepsi, where Pepsi will be paying him. He's created a company that hires 10 people, so he's able to be able to not seek employment, but to become an employer. And so, our children can, and we have to encourage them in terms of what they can do.
Absolutely.
Because you know what? One thing about it is, I grew up a lot, and I saw this a lot in a lot of households, a lot of athletic organizations that I played upon. But you hear a lot of times with the parents get to hollering at the children, or the coaches hollering at the players about what they're doing, wrong, or what you're doing bad. But no one on earth, on God's earth, is doing evil or bad 24 hours of the day. It's just impossible, first of all, when you have to go to sleep. But the point I'm making is we have to speak about what, and commend our children, commend the next person that you do whatever. Yeah. Even if they're getting done like that, commend them and let them know what they're doing good, what they're doing right. Because we can't just keep always hearing what you're not doing or what's not right. And that goes with the can and the can't. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Exactly.
It goes together.
If I can get back in very briefly.
Yes.
If I can. This is Bill.
Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, guys. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Went off a couple of times.
When you own your own cellular phone company and transmitting service, then perhaps we'll have better coverage.
Yeah, get that better data plan.
So I was talking about C.R. Patterson.
Yeah.
Like C.R. Patterson and Son and Company was a carriage building firm and the first African American owned manufacturer. Their company was founded by Charles Richardson Patterson, who was born into slavery in April 1833. Right, he left. Wow. He was on a plantation in Virginia, and he ended up escaping from slavery in 1861, headed west, settling in Greenfield, Ohio, in 1862. Okay. And they ended up starting one of the first. Like, this is at the time when even before. Just about before Ford, around the same time, these guys, Patterson Greenfield Car Company, they were black-owned, right, and was manufacturing cars.
Sure.
Back then. They were selling them for about $800 and something bucks. Yeah. But the reason why they fell, let me tell you the reason why they fell is because of economics, capitalism, and Chrysler, GM, and Ford.
Yeah, I was going to say, when the Ford did it, because Ford was one of the first ones that started making a fleet of the cars, and they were just stuck with a whole bunch of them. At one point in time, when the time went bad.
Exactly. They were the first to mass manufacture. They wasn't the only people that were building cars, but Ford was one of the first to mass manufacture cars, them GM and Chrysler. And then what they ended up doing was pushing him out.
Mm-hmm.
The Patterson Greenfield Company out, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't know how many people ever heard about a black manufacturer, black car company in the early 1900s. I didn't know about none of this.
You informed me, brother. I love black history.
Right now.
I appreciate you educating, and we talking about education. You go on with your bad self.
I wonder, is there still, is there anyone who has an existing car or some kind of, any kind of history of that car still? Somebody still have that model? I mean, it's got to be still in existence somewhere.
They ended up building 150 of them, right, at that time.
In a museum somewhere.
And then they, because they couldn't mass manufacture, and they were kept out of certain aspects of the business, that they end up start doing buses. They end up reorganizing and started the Greenfield Bus Body Company. You know what I'm saying? But during the Depression, they ended up falling out of the game. But the reason
do they still have that bus line? Do they still have that bus line now? The children's buses, the school buses, the Greenfield.
That was. You see those buses, school buses that they have now. Mm-hmm. It was because of these black, this black manufacturing company who start building those kind of things. They went into that part of the game. It's such an amazing story. One, because I never heard of it, and this is what it all boils down when we're talking about segregation and desegregating.
Yes.
That needs to be spoken about during Black History Month. I never heard that. That needs to be spoken of during Black History Month all the time.
Well, it needs to be talked about every day.
Yeah, every day is Black History, right?
Hey, that's true. But I'm saying how we have the Black History Month. They give so many accommodations to so many people. That should be up there,
absolutely,
all the time. I shouldn't be thinking about this at this point in life, right now.
I think when we speak about Black History Month, we're doing ourselves a disservice in general, because when we talk about segregation, desegregation, we start talking about education.
Sure.
Right? We need to be educating our kids on some information that empowers them,
Yes.
but also at the same time teaches them economics, and, as well. They get their spirituality at home,
Yes.
right? They
Right.
get all those other personal, real things at home, or whether they go to the mosque, church, synagogue, or whatever you believe in, whatever. But the reality of it with segregation is that we lost, teaching, that education that we need to learn to empower us to go to the next level. And I believe segregation was the biggest ploy, but it was a commercial, economic ploy to keep us without, money like that, to keep our money scattered. And once the people's money is scattered, and is not collectively together the way it was, then we're going to have results. And the results of is poverty, joblessness, where, people hurting each other, and, whether it's verbally or physically. We're going to have all kinds of things that go on if we're not collectively a family.
Yes.
And until we get there, until we get this black man, this black woman in a room together and fix that problem, because that's the biggest problem, we're not going to be able to do anything. We're not going to be able to educate, because the woman is the first teacher. She's the teacher from 0 to 4 until that little boy grows up into that man. And that man has to be there to rear that child.
So
we
to your
don't
point,
put that together.
to your point, Bill, to your point, I think one of the things you did was kind of illustrate a response to your query that I think we want to highlight. Number one, you knew about C.R. Patterson, and you mentioned him on the air. You talked about what he had accomplished and what he did, and we talked about the context within which he tried to do it. It was very forward thinking, and an amazing testimony to the capacity of our people, just fresh from slavery, producing and manufacturing, and then learning how to change his game in order to try to stay in the game as long as he could. But the context within which he was doing that was so destructive that it eventually decimated what he was attempting to do. But what you did by bringing that out was to illustrate the fact that somebody was doing something and that others may not have even known. I want to say this, and then I know Reverend Campbell wants to jump in as well, that there are times in which even today we talk about what's not being done, but I want to suggest that there are people doing what we want done, we just don't know about it. For instance, educating our children. There are educational programs right now. Schools, the Marcus Garvey Academy, right here in Los Angeles, other academies, the STEM Academy, dedicated to the education of African American children, about our history, about economics, about science, technology, engineering, and math. Right now, as we speak today, I'm aware of a couple of programs. So I think your question is well received, but I think we also got to do the research like you did with respect to C.R. Patterson and unearth, discover, and highlight and talk about those satellite programs so that more people become aware of it, and then we can support those programs and help to ensure that they continue.
Let me also bring us back to where we started, because I think it segues into what you're saying. The demographics that we live with stand over against the idea of having segregated communities in terms of both the areas that have historically been populated by African Americans are now broader in terms of population, and at the same time, many African Americans are moving out into other areas. But the issue becomes the need for us to invest ourselves. This goes back to the question in terms of what's happened with the school board, in terms of the making determinations about the succeeding of Dr. Marguerite Poindexter Lamont, in which we invest ourselves and begin to make a difference. We cannot simply leave the education of our children to those who sit in seats of power. We have to invest ourselves so as to ensure that the best interests of our children are included in the decisioning process of what goes on in terms of the education of our children. And that's what I would capture from you. What you really were saying is that during the period of segregation, we by virtue of circumstances, had responsibility for what was happening with our children. And so today we have to reinvest ourselves to, in fact, influence the decisioning about what happens in terms of the best interests of our children, and not simply leave it to somebody else to make those decisions for them. And then also help our children understand what they can do, to encourage them in terms of what they can do, and to provide the support base to them to become what they can become.
Exactly. Because for that simple fact, if more black people would have known about this brother and his family. Now, it was him and his family, right, that did this. They did have, he did have a partner by the name of J.P. Lowe, a Caucasian man. He saw, he was working as a blacksmith. He's like, wow, you can build this stuff? Let's go into partnership, right? So, if more black people, one last thing before I, say that, is like when it comes to education, I don't think that if I had children that I would say, for instance, in today's mind frame, that I would want, and let me just say this, I wouldn't want Al-Qaeda educating my children. You know what I'm saying? Like, because they're known terrorists today. And can you imagine if they were teaching your kids something? What do you think they're going to teach them?
Terrorism is in the eyes of the beholder, brother. We'll go from there. Go ahead.
And I think the reality is, once we realize that, for over 500 years, we were dealing with Al-Qaeda. You know what I'm saying? And then all of us expect somebody to give us the right education, the right spirituality, the right economics.
You're not talking about domestic Al-Qaeda in sheets and hoods over their heads with...
Hey, right.
Is that what you're talking about? Oh,
we had to go over there for that.
Oh, okay.
We've just been here. We have to go over there for that. It's already been here.
Domestic terrorism. Wow.
I think, again, if I can come back...
The KKK to educate our children. If you come on, really?
Bill, I know. Bill, I know. You're just trying to start trouble here. Yeah. That's the problem. Is you think too much. See, you think too much. You got too much wisdom. Both you and Rocky, y'all just see. Y'all not supposed to be intelligent like that. Y'all enlightened.
Yeah, the thing I want to come back to, and I think this is the character of the faith on the front line, is it gives us the opportunity to have these conversations at a broad-based level. We may not necessarily always agree with one another, but to be able to be conversant with one another, to be exposed
I learned something today.
What's right is right, though. I mean, when it's all said and done, what's right is what's right.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about is the opportunity to be in conversation, and through that conversation, particularly with additional information, to arrive at an enhanced sense of what we understand to be right and what we understand to be wrong. So I'm appreciative for the dialogue that we've achieved today through this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Please continue to call in. Thank you so much, Big Bill. And brother Rock the Boat Rocky calling in from Detroit.
No
and I hope that you all will.
What an awesome show you guys have, man. Thank you.
Please tune in next week.
Time and giving us, in the world, some reflection. Very important. Your show is awesome. Thank you.
I thank you. And now remember, now we want to do more than just talk. We want to do what we got to do. So I want to give you all a challenge. I want you to touch base with and find those programs that are doing what we say needs to be done. And I want to know about them so that we can let people know worldwide. There are people educating our children. There are black folk manufacturing things right now. There are people who are developing communities and developing real estate. There are entrepreneurs like Mr. Richard Carr, and there are others who are pushing the frontier of what are emerging opportunities for us. So I want to thank you, brothers, for being online. Thank you so much to my man and mentor, Pastor William Monroe Campbell. And I hope that you all will continue to believe, because we're more than just talk on LA Talk Live. This is Faith on the Front Line. Don't just talk about it. Let's get up about it. God bless. Happy Kwanzaa.
Bless you now.
Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. You're tuned in to LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk.